Welcome to this week's Into the Wilderness podcast. We thought we would change it up this week. It's just the two of us. One, because I've not actually been on a show.
For a while.
I'm one of your hosts, Darryl Pace, and
I'm the other, Byron Pace.
And I don't think we've actually had a show this year where it's just us two and catching up on a few things.
No, I don't think so. We do it periodically. It's normally like an interim show where we'll give a bit of a news update, catch everyone up on what's been happening in the world of hunting, fishing, conservation, wildlife, the environment, all of the above. But this is the first of 2018, which is kind of strange because it's August.
Yeah. But we've been busy, and we've had amazing guests throughout the entire year. So
we had a huge amount of feedback on our show 2 weeks ago, which was with Jenna Gearing. So if for some reason, if you're a new listener and you don't know who that was and you haven't listened to that show, or for some reason you haven't listened to it but you're listening to this show and you're a current listener,
it's the one behind.
Go back and listen to it. It's been tremendously popular. We've even had people sending us messages saying that they've reevaluated their life as a result of listening to that show, which is pretty cool and staggering.
Yeah, it is.
So we can make a difference.
We can make a difference. Do we have any? Should we get into the news?
Yeah,
or should we do the competition?
Well, yeah, we'll get the competition out of the way. So
yeah.
We didn't have one 2 weeks ago because we were giving a whole bunch of gear: Hornady reloading manual, some mugs, CZ, doormat, and a couple of other things which we'll put up a picture of to a very good cause that's being run by Scott Country. So you'll see the details of that. They're yet to put up the details for that. It's a raffle,
more
isn't
to
it?
follow. Yeah, it's. I'm not sure. I think it's
or
an
auction.
An auction.
But you'll see more details about that. But we have a new competition for as per regular for the show, and we're going to give away a Reloading with Rosie mug.
It's
coffee,
very
tea mug.
sought after.
It is. There's not actually that many of them around.
There isn't actually, because I was looking at it the other day, and I have not seen a single other person put up a picture of one of those mugs online. So I think we have one of the very few in the world.
I think we've got 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So there was a reloading series that was launched by Edgar Brothers in conjunction with Hornady maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Now, and as regular listeners will know, we give away a lot of Hornady gear. We've got a whole bundle of reloading manuals, the latest edition of reloading manuals to give away, and we've given away some reloading dies, and there's a whole heap of other reloading stuff, so it's in conjunction with that that we're going to be giving this away. So you'll see up a picture up on the social media and how to enter. Or have you thought how people are going to enter this, Darryl?
No, I've not.
Well, I tell you what, let's get a reloading picture from somebody. Let's see your reloading desk. Or if you don't reload, then you can just
because I was going to say the numbers are quite small actually that people reload. There's more and more. It's increasing.
It is.
But if you take a percentage of our listeners, you probably only find that it's actually a tiny percent that actually reload themselves.
Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do instead. What we would like to do is a lot of the grouse season is open. The seasons are slowly opening in front of us here. There's people already out after stags. The roebuck rut has passed.
Fishing's
now,
well
much.
underway.
Fishing, yeah, we've actually had some rain, so people are catching some fish. So just give us a picture of what you're doing at this time of year.
Harvest is still on in the north of Scotland.
We will even, if you're a farmer and you can't get away to do the things that you really want to be doing because you're harvesting, we'll even accept a harvesting picture. We just want to see what you're up to.
Yeah, we'll do that. So all you'll have to do is put it under the social media post or tag us on Instagram. And if you do not have any social media, which we know a number of you don't, then just send us a picture through email, which is podcast@paceproductionsuk.com. Done. Right, we're getting
straight into it.
Straight into the nitty gritty.
I'll start with a real easy one, which is just to make people aware of something that's coming up on the BBC on Sunday. I think it's 6:05. There's a program called The Deer Stalker, which is a pretty rare thing for the BBC to show.
So the Sunday this comes out, because after this weekend it's completely irrelevant.
But it will be on iPlayer for a month. So I don't actually have my phone on me to see what the date is today. I think it's the 19th.
of
19th of August, I think.
2018.
Just in case you're listening to this in 2019.
Well, we know that a number of people do go back, which is cool. But yeah, so it's going to be on iPlayer for a month. But if not, I imagine
It'll be
it
somewhere
will be somewhere else afterwards. So what's it called?
It's called The Deer Stalker. And all I've seen is the trailer, sort of a 2.5 minutes of it, and a bit of a spiel. I read up about the production company that made it. They do a lot of stuff for the BBC, like air ambulance and real life jobs. That's the kind of documentaries they make. And for the most part, from what I can see, it looks like a very honest portrayal of deer stalking. But we'll see. But it's nice that the BBC are showing something like that, because it's been a very long time since I've seen a programme of that kind of nature on the BBC. Not that I actually even have a TV in my house, but I do try and keep a track on what's going on.
I don't actually have live TV as such in my house either. I don't even have an aerial in my house.
I had an old friend of mine from university staying over the weekend, and he said, "Do you realise how ironic it is that you run a film production company, but you don't even have a TV in your house?" So I never really thought about that before.
Well, we have TVs everywhere else.
Yeah, we do.
And yeah, I mean, we do have a TV. I have the screen. I just don't.
No, I don't even have the screen.
Yeah,
I've just got slightly distracted because there's about 100 lapwings. More. Look, they're still coming.
Oh wow,
flying over the house right now.
Wonder where they're off to.
They'll all be mobbing up. More. There's more coming.
That's pretty cool.
That is amazing.
Anyway, no one can see that.
No, they can't. But sorry.
Yeah,
that's what happens when you've got a lovely view from where you're recording the podcast. You see stuff. So you're up next, us.
Okay. I'm just trying to decide what.
Well, mine's completely random.
Yeah, so mine is as well. I've got one here. This is quite an interesting one. Dogs who need saving within the UK, and these are dog breeds that have either only had a small amount of litters or next to nothing in the last 12 months. And I'm going to read you the list, because some of them I have never even heard of. Some of them I knew of. So French Bulldog, I didn't know that was a one that was under threat. So all of these dogs have had less than 100 litters in 2017, I think. So some of them had like 40 litters and some even less. So French Bulldog, an Otter Hound.
Oh, yeah. Sarah Farnsworth won the Leica Field Sports photography
quite
competition.
An impressive dog, actually.
Yeah, with pictures of them.
A Skye Terrier. They're also very cool dogs. Mm-hmm. Glen of Imal Terrier. Never heard of that. A Field Spaniel. It looks just kind of like a normal Spaniel, if you ask me. A Curly Coat Retriever.
I've seen those, actually.
A Sussex Spaniel.
I'm blank for me. I've never seen a Sussex.
A Smooth Collie. I've seen them before. Irish Water Spaniel. We've got pictures of one.
Yeah.
Irish Red and White Setter. I think
I've seen them before working. Yeah.
And Smooth Fox Terrier.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I'm surprised Clumber Spaniel isn't on there.
Yeah. Well, maybe it had more than 100.
Maybe it just had more than 100. I know Clumber Spaniel.
Well, this was only the top list.
Okay.
This wasn't the definitive list.
I see.
So
interesting.
Yeah. So there we have it. If you've got one of those breeds, then it could be a rare breed. And if you're considering a dog, then maybe consider one of these breeds that are.
I'm going to look into Field Spaniel, because I don't really know anything about a Field Spaniel. But you're telling me they look a lot like a Springer, or.
The thing is, I only saw one picture of it, and it looked a bit like a cocker, actually. Quite a slender body on it.
I'll check that out.
A thinnish face. But you get so many variations on the types of dogs that even like my Cocker Spaniel looks like a giant compared to other Cocker Spaniels.
If you are a podcast listener and you own one of those breeds, we'd love to hear from you. And send us a picture of your dog.
Yeah, send us a picture. If you have especially, or know someone with some of the more obscure breeds that we've never heard of, like the Sussex Spaniel, send us a picture. We'd love to know.
Vaccine for Lyme disease. I didn't think I'd have a chance to talk about this at any point in the upcoming years since we first started talking about it on the podcast maybe 2 years ago. But apparently now there is a very good chance that they're going to be able to release a vaccine for Lyme disease that's going to be up to 96% effective. At the moment it's in trials, so they think that it's going to be possible, and it seems like a real reality now. Whereas only a few years ago, I mean, we're only really just understanding it in this country now. An interesting fact that was in the same article as that was that compared to a decade ago, Lyme disease in the UK is found in 2 times as many locations as a decade ago.
Mm. But I mean,
it could be the case that it was always there.
Yeah,
but
we
now
just weren't aware of it.
Well, the testing is better,
or the spread of people and animals has gone further.
So it's hard to say what the cause and effect is.
We can see through just our species of deer in the UK how they're spreading north.
Yeah.
Particularly the ones down the
smaller
deer. So that in itself there's a population shift, and it's moving north because it's getting a little bit warmer up here. But
it is it's a really serious problem if you're affected by it. Tim Pilbeam, who is on Field Sports Channel quite a lot and writes for Rifle Shooter, he's been a long-term sufferer of Lyme disease. And I didn't actually even know that until quite recently. I've known him for a lot of years, but I didn't know that until quite recently. And he has been writing a series in Rifle Shooter about living with it. So go and check that out. Even if you don't suffer with it yourself, it's really interesting.
It'll be a game changer. It really will, especially if a vaccine comes out, because it basically means anyone that, I mean, it'll never be a blanket thing. The population needs it, but it'll be people high risk, foresters, gamekeepers, even people that spend a lot of time just hill walking as well. They're the kind of people that would be deemed as high risk. I would think that we would probably get it as well.
I would think so, yeah.
Considering the amount of tick bites we've both had.
I've been quite lucky this year. I think I've only pulled 1 tick off it.
Two this year, that's it.
And compared to last year, but I believe they've been quite bad. I don't know why. I've maybe just been a bit lucky.
And they were only tiny ones as well that I pulled off. It always freaks me out when they're really big.
Ugh.
Moving on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. That was all I had on that.
Okay. I actually saw it back in the news today, but this was in the news. It's been in the news quite a bit. But pangolins, we've also spoken about it multiple times in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
About pangolins.
Ivan Carter talked about them.
Yes, he did. It's a species that you may never even have heard of, or maybe you have recently because it's been a little bit more in the news. If you don't know what it looks like, the only way I can really describe it is it looks like a bit of an armadillo. Everyone knows like that. Yeah. Everyone knows what an armadillo looks like. A little armored.
It's more scaly than that.
A lot more scaly. And scientists in China have been asking for nature reserve to be made up for them because there's been a 50% decline in Asia since the 1970s, and it is the most trafficked mammal on the planet.
A lot of pangolins get shipped out of Africa.
Yeah, so the poaching, I didn't realize how bad it was. Obviously, Africa is a prime target, but I didn't realize how bad it was in Asia as well, and I didn't realize how many species there was. I think there's 8 species of pangolin
in Asia.
Well, no, Asia and Africa.
Oh, okay.
And they range all the way up to the Himalayan mountains.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I always had it in my mind that they were primarily an African species.
No, they're not. So I think there's probably more in Asia than there is. And if you're wondering what they get used for, their primary use is for medicinal purposes, for their scales, so they get ground down to a powder, and the rest of them is used for meat. But the meat, I think, from my understanding, is actually a secondary part of it.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that gets poached and smuggled out of Africa is dried.
Yeah.
You see them, they're like flat, dry skins, essentially.
It's because it's hard to transport over big distances when you've got...
And they don't need them alive, so...
Yeah.
Something closer to home, and nothing more than really an observation. My cousin was over from New Zealand, the same cousin that I was with when I was in New Zealand just recently, and he was fishing for finnick up in the Moray Firth. And he was saying he had the most incredible experience in the evening that he was out. And his brother, who actually lives up by Inverness, had told him to go down to this particular place because there was a very high chance that he would see this. Because there had been so little rain up until literally the last week, a lot of the salmon, the migratory fish that would normally be up the rivers by now, have been sitting off the coast. And every tide, the dolphins have been pushing the salmon up onto the beach to eat them. And Ant saw this. He was standing fishing, and the dolphins were almost pushing these salmon up between his legs onto the beach. It's something I would love to have seen.
They're not stupid dolphins.
They're not stupid, but can you imagine this year how bad the predation in the coastal reaches have been for migratory fish as a result of not being able to get up the rivers. Because they're fairly safe. Those bigger fish are fairly safe once they're in the rivers. But in the sea, dolphins, seals, all manner of birds, other fish.
The thing is, if you just take away human involvement, that would just be a completely natural thing. There'd be enough fish. It would be a natural cycle of every 10 years they get hammered because they can't get up the rivers or whatever it is. But obviously with the pressures that's being put on them everywhere else, that extra bit of predation is probably going to have an effect on it.
Exactly. With some rivers which are marginal anyway in terms of their reproductive states, this year could be the tipping point.
Dolphins got to eat.
They do. I didn't have this written down, but I spoke to Chris Conroy, who's been on this podcast before, who is the fisheries biologist up in the Loch Ness system, up in the Ness system, sorry. And I was asking him about pink salmon to see if they had seen any this year. And he said they only know of one this year, but he was saying that because of the life cycle, he wasn't actually expecting to see anything this year. So next year is going to be the tallying year. And if they don't see anything really next year, then it was a blip. If they see loads, he reckons they're probably here to stay.
That's really cool. That's interesting. On to the next thing. In fact, I'll kind of do two here. I didn't really read too much into it because there's still not really a huge amount of information how it's going to work. But there's new laws coming in to stop puppies being sold by pet shops.
Oh, that was literally like 2 days ago.
Yeah. In England, I think it is.
I missed that part.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's only England right now. I'm not too sure.
They're trying to stop puppy farms, aren't they?
Yes, it is. It's trying to curb puppy farms. I think it has to be like through registered dealers.
Breeders.
Breeders. And you can't, from the quick thing I read, you can't buy it from a shop or anything unless they're over 6 months old.
Okay, so it's for young dogs.
For young puppies.
It's not a bad thing, I don't think.
No, I think, especially when you're going to buy a dog, you need to do the research and speak to people that have got dogs. If you can't see the mother, and I think that's a big tell. If you can't see the mother, then there's a alarm bell should be ringing straight away. Not being able to see the father is not always the biggest issue in the world because often they're stud dogs. So my Cocker Spaniel, I never got to see the father, but I know exactly who the father is because I actually see pictures of him online all the time. So I know who his father is, but his mum was...
Same with me. I didn't see the father of my new puppy, but I saw the bitch. So. If you're going to own a dog, I think people should be able to have the invest the time to go and do it properly. And it's a very sort of easy option, isn't it? Go to a pet shop and pluck a puppy.
Yeah. I mean, they're saying that more people should take rescue dogs. If you're going to get a dog, consider a rescue dog. And there's two... Well, I see a problem with that. Is one... Rescue places always struggle to get rid of older dogs, and if you've got more people trying to get them, then you're only going to be left with a certain amount. But secondly, I think it's wrong to say if you're getting a dog, you should consider a rescue dog first, is because often rescue dogs, and we know this through experience, are damaged. We've had two rescue dogs, and there is something very different to having a dog from a puppy from a good litter to having a rescue dog, because I wouldn't say all the time, but a lot of the time the dogs are there through no fault of their own, but sometimes there is issues with the dog, and that's why they've been...
or maybe the issues have developed because of the way they've been treated.
Yeah, or they've been brought up with bad habits and things like that.
So yeah, it can be something that you really have to be sure you know what you're getting into. And it always breaks my heart to see the dogs in rescue homes.
We know a number of people that have had rescue dogs as well. Our friend, they had a rescue dog, a collie, and that dog was never right from the day that they got it. It
eventually came around. It takes a special kind of person to be able to bring out the dog that's hiding in some of those rescue dogs.
I take my hat off to people that especially dedicate their time to rehabilitating rescue dogs, because it takes a lot of work and a lot of patience, and it is heartbreaking because I would say that 99% of the time it could have probably been fixed when it was a puppy if it was done properly.
There's a lot of horrible people out there, as we know from our own husky.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so moving straight on to the RSPCA. I don't know if people saw this week. And for our foreign listeners, the RSPCA is the Royal Society for Protection Against Cruelty to Animals, I think it is. And it was formed in the early 90s, 1930s, I think it was. And this is a charity, and it's come under a little bit of fire over the last week, because the boss was paid a sum more than £150,000 over his salary to leave.
That was his golden handshake.
Which is golden handshake, get lost. And the Charity Commission are looking into. I mean, this is a charity that's meant to be looking after the welfare of animals. They target specifically, I would say, older sects of society.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's
your
they get their
grannies.
money from people's charitable donations.
Yeah.
And what you say is right. It tends to be, I mean, they've been caught out, lots of charities, not just them, have been caught out before in recent years for deliberately targeting vulnerable people and harassing vulnerable people.
These guys and other people is 100%. I know they do it. They'll go, oh, can you donate £3? Yeah, £3 a month. Next month, oh, for an extra £3, you can save this bird, and then it just goes on. And there's loads of articles online about charities harassing people for more money. And, some people are savvy and like, you know what, I gave you money and I'm going to cancel now because you've harassed me for more. But the point being is that if you've got a boss of a charity that's meant to be looking after animals being paid over £150,000, you've got to really ask yourself.
Well, no, he was paid 150 grand extra on top of the 150 odd that he was already being paid.
Yeah, but even £150,000 salary is, I would say, verging on absolutely ridiculous for what is meant to be someone that is
something paid for by charitable
donation. If this was someone in the banking world, they would be.
Oh yeah, they'd be hung, drawn,
drawn, quartered.
And also keep in mind that that's one person. There will be a hierarchy of people underneath him, or it was a guy, was it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
There'll be a hierarchy of people underneath him who are also on very, very well-paid positions.
But a lot of these charities, not just animal charities, if you don't believe me, go and look it up. You can look at, you can find out all of the salaries of all the top things: Save the Children, Oxfam, Red Cross, and all of their top bosses are on over £100,000 a year, which is insane, absolutely insane.
I mean, my issue is not the actual amount; it's how the organisations gather money and then tie it to the amount. I've got no problem with people earning lots of money.
No,
that's ridiculous. If you work hard, you're going to earn lots of money. But when you've got an organisation which doesn't make its money through the capital markets, they're not producing something. They're relying on the goodwill of hardworking people. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think I should reiterate: making money is not a bad thing. If you're making £100,000-200,000 a year, then that's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, great job. But if it's through the charitable donations of people, and a lot of the time people with not necessarily a lot of money,
very true.
then there's a real.
Is it right? Is it morally
it's
right?
Morally not
No,
right.
it's not.
How is it
morally corrupt?
How can I can't get it through my head, because you think that if you work for a charity, part of you wants to be part of the solution, and you taking a huge salary, surely that money could be better used. And then you can go into the other things that go on in those charities.
Well, yeah, we've seen it all recently with the sex scandals, haven't we?
Yeah.
Was that Red Cross or Oxfam or? I can't remember. I'm not going to say because I actually can't remember off the top of my head. It was one of those charities, and I think the particular case that was highlighted was in Haiti.
Yes, it was. But I mean, that's happening all over the world. And the thing is, you'd have to be an idiot to think that it still isn't going on now to this day. It's absolutely insane. And then it goes, you can look further into even the animal charities where PETA and I
wouldn't even class PETA as an animal charity.
But I mean, they put down a huge amount of their animals.
Most of them.
Yeah. And the thing is that we've also seen in the past. I think it was a friend of ours. There was some animal charities. It's really weird how charities work because they obviously need animals to make money. So we had a friend that was trying to donate. Was a donkey barn.
He wanted to get a donkey.
Get a donkey from a donkey sanctuary
because he liked donkeys,
and they wouldn't give him one because they needed the donkeys
because of people paying to come to the donkey sanctuary.
How insane is
that? They didn't
have
enough donkeys, and he wanted to give this. He wanted 2 donkeys. He ended up getting 2 llamas instead. He had loads of
llamas. Are cool,
he's a great guy, and he wanted to. Yeah, he was doing a good deed. And he was going to pay for the donkeys. Like, he's just like, well, tell me how much they cost, and I'll buy them off you, and it'll help support the sanctuary. I know we don't have enough donkeys as it is to encourage people to come through. It's like, that's madness. Madness. But anyway, so are that you done on that?
Yeah, that's it.
From that to the environment, and I saw a cool little video the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, that was technologies that are just been recently invented or currently in place that are helping clean up and save the environment. There was 10, I think, and I've sort of picked the top five in my mind. The first one was this device called a sea bin. I don't know if you've seen this, Daryl.
I have seen it.
Yeah, so
where it sits on the surface and then sucks all the stuff. It's basically a large design of what you get in swimming pools.
Yeah, same thing.
Swimming pools,
like the swimming pool filter.
The outdoor swimming pools that take leaves and that off the top.
Same idea.
Yeah, same idea. If you live anywhere but the UK, you probably know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's a big ring that sits. It's got essentially a bag in it, but it's a membrane that the water can pass through, and it just the lip of it bobs and it sucks the water down into a vortex. And anything that it sucks down, so a plastic bag or bits of debris, it's mainly designed for cleaning up plastics. That's the main focus of it, rather than organic material. Goes through, the water passes out the bottom, but it keeps all the rubbish in. Can you imagine these around harbours and just anywhere where people can monitor them and collect the bags?
Yeah. It's
great, so simple.
I guess the only problem is how it needs to have a suction.
No, but it doesn't need to have a suction because of the way that it works. The lip bobs up and down, so as it creates it itself. It has like a funnel underneath it, so the water level inside is temporarily lower than the outside, and then the lip bobs down and it sucks in.
It is a cool idea.
It functions by itself. The second thing was a beer bottle crusher, that crushes the glass of beer bottles into fine enough particles that it essentially turns it into sand. And they're using these to replace sand in beaches that are being washed away.
That's very clever. So drink more beer in glass bottles.
Yes, but recycle it. Yeah. Edible, still on the theme of beer, edible beer packaging.
I've seen that before, where it feeds the fish.
It does, yes. Yeah. It's made, maybe there are other companies out there.
It's for people wondering what it is, it's,
it's the rings, plastic rings. You don't really see it.
You don't really see it in this country, maybe with tenants or something, but it's the rings where you get like an 8-pack or something.
They're normally a 6-pack.
6-pack. I think it's more of an American thing. I honestly, for the last 3 years,
a lot of cardboard now. Here.
It's all cardboard, yeah.
But they obviously still do exist. But this company called Saltwater Brewery has made these plastic rings that allow you to pick up a 6-pack or whatever. And it's made from barley and wheat, essentially. And it breaks down. And it's edible, which is a great thing. More of that kind of thinking when it comes to packaging will benefit the environment, for sure.
It will. And maybe some fish.
There was one small issue that I did think with it. Would it encourage people to just chuck these things? Oh, well, it's edible by the fish. Does that mean people are going to deliberately chuck it in waterways? I mean, yeah, it'll degrade, but is that something we want to encourage people to do?
Maybe if they just don't encourage it, but if it goes in there by mistake, then it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Edible water blobs. This is the weirdest thing. It's to do with packaging and reducing the amount of packaging.
Water blobs, did you say?
Blobs, yeah, I did say blobs. What it is a membrane made from a seaweed extract.
Okay.
So imagine going into a shop, and instead of buying your 250 milliliter bottle of water, which is not something that I do very often because I normally have my own reusable water bottle, but you have a shelf full of these
blob.
Yeah, like perfect balls.
So it's a bit. I'm picturing here like a dishwasher tablet.
No. Like the size of your fist.
No, but
smaller. So
but they're like a membrane, like the dishwasher tablets.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So it's a squidgy membrane. So it's.
Please tell me you just suck through the ball.
No. You put the whole thing in your mouth. It's not the size of your fist.
What?
I misspoke there.
Just
like a ping pong ball.
So you just put the blob in your mouth.
You put the blob in your mouth and you bite down, and the membrane bursts. It dissolves, and you drink the water.
Sounds interesting.
No packaging. But it has like a very thin membrane on the outside that you peel off, like an orange.
Okay, yeah.
So otherwise it would be completely
contaminated.
So you peel that off, and then it's all moist, and then you eat it.
I mean, it's a good idea. I don't think it'll take off. But the bottom line is that people in the UK should just be refilling bottles. I've never really understood the buying the water thing, especially in Scotland. Especially here. We have some of the finest water on the planet. It's so good. And, okay, further down south in, south of England, you've got a lot of lime in the water, so it does taste a bit chalky and disgusting. Sorry about that. It's not our fault. But the point is that you could still get a water filter thing. I used to do it in Australia. The water tastes a bit dodgy in Perth because they used desalination plants and that. So it's not the tastiest water, but as soon as you put it through one of those, those jugs that just has a carbon filter.
That our gran had.
Honestly, tastes almost the same as the water we get here.
Takes all the impurities
out. Get one of those, and one of those little cartridges lasted about 6 months. It's like next to nothing if you want good water, and then fill up a water bottle. It will save you money.
I was just thinking, a great government initiative to remove all of the need for plastic water bottles is that any service provider should provide...
No, they have to.
Do they?
I think,
as it stands right now?
I think it stands as it
right. No, but I'm thinking even like a petrol station.
Okay, yeah.
Cool. Now, that could be subsidised, or they get the whatever's metered through that comes off their rates.
Yeah.
There must be a very easy way, and that would cost almost nothing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, because in Scotland we don't pay for water. We do and we don't. So it's not
metered.
Yeah, so it's not metered. So
mine is actually.
But you're in a very unique situation where you live. But 99% of the rest of the population in Scotland do not have metered water, so it's just part of your council tax. So it's 140 or 200 pounds.
I think it's dependent on the size of your house, isn't it?
It's a very weird system here, so we don't need to go into it, but it depends on your size of your house and the value of your house in 1960 or something stupid like that. So it's not on your current day value of your house. But anyway, so you just pay a set rate for water, so it means that you can just have the hose pipe on all day long, filling up a pond.
Not that we recommend that.
Not that we recommend that, but the point is that it's not metered here, so there's no excuse in terms of monetary thing in Scotland for someone
fill your water bottle up.
For someone, not to fill up your water bottle. In England, I think they're metered. Are they in England?
I don't want to say that they all are, but I know that there is a lot of metering. You can let us know if we've never lived there. So. Yeah. This wasn't part of the list, but it's along the same sort of theme. So I'll finish up with this before we go back to you, Daryl. I know that we did mention this very briefly on a podcast before, but I read a little bit more about it. It was about microfibers from your clothes and how this is affecting the sea. And they found microfibers which come off your clothes when you wash them, and then the grey water disappears off essentially into the water system. A lot of that's not even doesn't even go into the sewage system necessarily. That has been found. There have been microfibers found in seafood. Well, that makes sense. But honey and also beer.
Beer?
Yeah, beer.
It's interesting. Honey? How is it getting in the honey?
Well, I don't know. It didn't actually say. They just said that they obviously did some sampling of food.
Maybe it's dodgy honey. I don't know. No, I'm intrigued because I'm just trying to think from a practical sense of how is microfibers getting...
Think about this. You've washed your clothes. And I'm just making this up now. I'm trying to work out a reason. You put it on your washing line and it's windy. It blows some microfibers off onto some flowers that are near your washing line.
Yeah.
They're very small, these microfibers.
Yeah.
And then it's in the pollen. And then the bee comes, collects the pollen, and now there's microfiber
on a scale like that, yeah, maybe.
Because you know the numbers. I mean, how many your couple of hives that you've got there? They're doing a lot of flights and a lot of collection of pollen.
They're doing a lot of flights. I mean, the one hive, yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard to imagine here where we're sitting right now because it's just surrounded by fields and there's barely any houses.
But think around the towns.
Around the towns, and also hanging your washing up here is like a race to do in this country. So you eye up the clouds and go, do I have enough hours to dry my washing, or is it going to have to be done inside? Because I would say that 80% of our washing gets dried inside.
Certainly during
on
the
a
winter
drying
months,
rack.
beside the fire.
Yeah.
Think about London. When we were talking about this the other day, there was something that came out last week that was saying that they've got to the point in London where there's probably not enough pollen for the amount of bees, and that's because of this increase in recreational beekeepers. It's not the natural bee population there. But if you look at a place like London, I bet you there's not only microfibers in there, there's probably all sorts of horrible pollutants in the honey from London.
There must be. I
don't know that as a fact.
I imagine the bees are fairly good at
filtering out,
kind of cleaning it to an extent.
I don't know.
I
mean, if it's in the pollen, surely it's in the pollen.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one to find out how. I mean, the thing is the guys that sell it commercially, they probably get it tested.
Yeah, they'd have to
down south. It is quite cool, especially in cities, how they do beekeep on top of tenement buildings, and the bees go and find flowers. It's incredible how cool these little insects are, that they'll go wherever they need to go to collect.
The main issue is not the fact that you would be eating a little bit of plastic fiber. The main issue is that, and I didn't know this, but toxic chemicals cling particularly to these synthetic fibers more than they would do to organic fibers. And that's the issue. And this compounds what we were just surmising about London, is microfibers plus all of the toxic garbage that's flying around the air. They're clinging to the microfibers, and that could become the problem.
Yeah,
they've already banned microbeads in the States and here now as well.
I don't think you can buy
microbead
cleaning stuff anymore here.
It's not. I don't think we couldn't get to it. How would you ban microfibers? I think that's almost impossible. But I think what you could do is you could enforce regulation where people have to put filters on their washing machines, because that's where most of it's coming from. It's the washing and then the grey water that's coming out.
I imagine in the next 10 years there will be a filter that you have to pull out and clean on a washing machine.
Just the same as a tumble
dryer.
dryer.
You don't get right now.
But okay.
Well,
you can pick up.
Well, you're on environment, and I think I should just stay on environment for a second. A very interesting thing just came out, and it was actually a study from a PhD student in India, and they were looking at their waterways and how choked they are with natural organic material, particularly flowers, and in India they use flowers for all sorts of celebrations, but on a very large scale for weddings, funerals,
unbelievable.
celebrations. Barnes been to India, so he's seen it. 2 million tons of floral waste is dumped every single day in India, and most of it goes into the rivers. And okay, organic, it's probably going to break down, but the issue they're having is that it's producing algae, and it's reducing the oxygen levels massively in the rivers, and the rivers are dying.
Yeah.
So, although it's organic waste, it's
still a nitrogen source
because it's so much.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, it was something I would never think about. So basically, they're just trying to find ways to
reduce it.
It's
going to be really hard because that's it's a massive cultural thing.
Yeah,
and to make a cultural shift, something that's so ingrained in the way that people live there.
I like the way it added in the research thing was it's already polluted rivers because it's already full of plastic.
Well, plastic and sewage.
Dead bodies and sewage.
Well, along the very same theme as that, I just read this today, was that the state of Florida has announced a state of emergency because of what they call a red tide. Now, this is something that happens apparently every year, but is normally finished by about April time, and it's algal blooms, but in the sea.
We get it here. Whenever I go diving, you see the huge algal blooms, and but it's not red here.
No. Well, and the reason that they've declared a state of emergency is because it's lasted so long. So since the 1950s, they've seen a steady creep.
Florida, you said?
Yeah, Florida, along the coast of Florida. Not just on the length of time that these blooms are in the sea, but also the intensity of them. So I guess kind of the density of the blooms. And this year it's been so bad that there's just been dead fish, loggerhead turtles, manatees, washing up on the beaches. And they've got a real problem. The one scientist was saying, along the areas where the red tide is now, there is basically nothing left. It's all dead. It'd be interesting to speak to Robbie Kroger about that.
I wonder what encourages it. Heat.
So algal blooms are natural.
Yeah,
they come from nitrogen.
Yeah,
and they feed off nitrogen and organic material in the waterways, but it is particularly exacerbated by pollution.
Okay.
So sewage in particular can make it many times worse than it would be normally, and also fertilizer, because that is obviously a very concentrated form of nitrogen.
There's obviously some form of issues going on where they need to sort it out. But I wonder if they control it, if it'll go back, recede.
Well, who knows? I mean, 1950s, that's a long period of time to see a steady increase. Yeah. There might be more than that. It could be sea temperatures as well. I'm only guessing here.
Yeah.
But we know that our algal blooms in our fresh waters are particularly bad in very warm summers like the summer that we've had.
Interesting. I wonder what eats it. There must be something that eats it.
I don't know. But in the back of my mind, I seem to remember some sort of algal harvesting in Japan, and I'm not sure if it was to do with algal blooms. It could be something different. I don't know if anything eats it.
Interesting. So I think I'll be going on to the next thing. I'm staying on pollution and actually staying in the US. Contact lenses, something that I never really thought about. Neither of us wear them. We don't wear glasses or contact lenses, but I've got a number of friends that do. And there is, according to a new study, 15 to 20% are thrown away in the toilet in the US, with 45 million users in the USA, and 15%. There's 15% of Europe also wear contact lenses, so you can see numbers between the two parts of the world. And they estimate that 200 tons of plastic ends up in, I think they call it digested sludge. And the problem with it is, I think there's 200 tons a year of contact lenses. And you think 200 tons isn't actually a huge amount, but it's contact lenses, so you need a lot to make up that amount. What's happening is that it's going into the sewage system because people are flushing it down the toilet, and then it's going into this sludge as it breaks down, and it's being spread on fields. And I'm not too sure how it works because, from my understanding, in the UK you cannot spray human waste on fields. Which this was basically saying, it's going from the sewage system onto the fields, and this is where the issue is that the huge amount of plastic is being spread across the fields. So maybe someone in the US can maybe share some light on this.
Yeah, we banned it years ago.
Because, I mean...
maybe it could be one of these articles that's not being particularly clear. But yeah,
maybe it's not being particularly clear, because I couldn't understand, because it was talking about a sludge and being spread onto the field. And I couldn't really understand, because I would have thought it's the kind of thing that nearly all the world would kind of ban, because the spread of disease is really bad. I mean, that's probably why back in the day a huge amount of diseases were spread, because we used to spread human feces.
I don't know if it's because we have better ability to process it these days, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Processing, clean it up.
Maybe their processing system's really good.
From that, I'm going to go to just a bit of information. I don't know if we mentioned this at the time when it happened, but I came by it and I thought it was worth mentioning again, because our regular listeners will know our affinity to Africa. And in March this year, we lost the very last male northern white rhino. It was put down because it was incredibly old. It was in captivity, and there's only 2 females left. So the last hope of the northern white rhino will be AI, but the females are very old too. So that could be an extinction.
They need to get onto it quickly.
It's at our doorstep now.
Yeah, it is.
Incredibly sad.
But there is a little bit of light, the fact that we are able to do something about it, even at this final stage.
Yeah, it's possible. What I thought was, although the story is very sad, what is interesting about the history of it is that they were very heavily poached back in the 1970s, and that particular male northern white rhino was moved to the Czech Republic in the 1970s to protect it so that it would survive for purposes of keeping the population. And then I don't actually know what period it was brought back, but at some point after the 1970s, it was brought back to Africa But sadly, the great plan and all that effort to keep it alive potentially might have failed.
Well, I reckon when they first did it, they probably didn't realize how important that last rhino would be.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty sad. A new poll online. I'm not sure if anyone has have read this, but I reckon that if you are involved in country sports or something to do with hunting, maybe fishing to an extent, they seem to get away with it a little bit. But a new poll has revealed that 2/3 of people living in the country have received online abuse.
Oh, yeah.
It was a study
2/3
done by the Countryside Alliance.
Doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me at all. And basically, they're calling for social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, and so on, to have stricter controls or better monitoring of online abuse and doing more about it. Because right now, someone can say, "I'm going to come around and kill your children," and
it is a hot topic. I mean, not just
about
within the field sports community, but just generally speaking, online abuse is a hot topic. I mean, I think they even have dedicated people within police departments now.
They do. It is now an offence, I think, in this country, to send an online threat to someone. But I think depending on who you are in society, how serious they will take it,
and the nature. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's probably a lot of grey areas with what people say.
The problem is that you can't blame the police in this country for not being able to tackle online abuse properly, because they're understaffed, underfunded as it is, and if they're getting thousands of phone calls across the UK every day saying, "This person said this to me online, you need to go," and I mean, come on, really, it's not going to happen. And I think that another thing with online abuse, there is some that is, I would say, fairly serious and needs to be taken seriously, but then there's others where people just need to look the other way and stop being being weak. Yeah, I think the problem is we're now in this offended society where everything offends someone, and people just need to just grow up and not be offended by everything.
Yeah, I agree.
I've never seen so much. Like, every week someone is offended by something.
By something that said. Yeah. If anybody grew up with ginger hair, then they would know what it's like.
Yeah.
For those who don't know me, I couldn't be more ginger, really. I'm going to change the topic completely for just one of my things on my list here, and that is doctored photos. Because I saw a photo that came up on my social media feed the other day, and it was being praised because it was awesome. And I looked at it and thought, that doesn't look real at all, which is fine, except for the fact that the person, the photographer, in inverted commas, who had put this up had given this long spiel about how awesome it was that they had slept out in a tent until 4 o'clock in the morning by a waterhole and taken this picture of a buffalo with this night sky and stars behind it, and it was complete bull, because you could see the stars shining through the buffalo. So I don't know whether the buffalo had even been taken during the day, or if it was even real looking at it, but clearly they'd cut round it. Well, they hadn't even done that. They'd just done a really bad job with the opacity. It was a
very bad Photoshop job.
My point.
Did you give him some online abuse?
I did. No, I didn't give him long. I just, I couldn't actually find the original poster because it was inside some group, so I only saw what had been shared by someone who was a friend of mine on Facebook. And I just said, it's a shame that the author of the photograph has felt the need to lie and tell a story about a picture that has been faked. So I couldn't have cared less if it was just a picture. What I took exception to was the fact that he had tried to claim it was something it wasn't.
I'm actually going to, while you talk, I'm going to just find out some information, because there was a wildlife photographer last year that got caught out for, it was like the Photographer of the Year award, like the worldwide thing, and he got caught out because he'd used a stuffed animal in the thing, but I'm going to find it while Byron carries on speaking.
Yeah, it's one of those things that bugs me, because we take a lot of photographs and we take pride in. The whole point about a photograph is you're capturing something that is real, and there's no problem in making some tweaks and adjustments if you're trying to provide a photograph for a particular client, if it's a job and they need something in a certain way, but don't lie about it. what's the point? What are you gaining? What this person was gaining was he wanted everybody to think he was an awesome photographer off the back of this, but instead all he did was make himself look incredibly stupid.
I found it. I found the article. So this was last year. The winner of the environment category of the prestigious Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition has been disqualified after the competition's organisers discovered that the anteater. So it's a starry night scene.
Have you got the picture?
Yeah, I do. Of an anteater eating and with insects glowing right next to it.
So this is kind of similar to what we were just talking about.
And he was disqualified because it was a stuffed anteater that he'd placed.
Wow.
It's an incredible picture.
But it's a lie.
But it's a complete lie. Yeah. And that's the one thing with photography. You have to be so kind of careful what you're looking at. I mean, you can tell bad Photoshop jobs, but sometimes, and I guess this is where artistic license comes in, because there's actually a huge amount of photography that is done that you go, wow, I cannot believe they captured that shot. But it has been artificially set up to capture that shot. I think kingfishers is a good example. Often wildlife photographers will use a tank.
See, when I found that
minnows
out, I thought that was pretty dishonest, and I was really disappointed by that.
So what they'll do is they'll capture minnows in a tank, and then they'll place the tank in the water, a see-through tank, and then you can't see the tank, obviously, and then they'll wait, and now they know where the fish are, and then it'll dive into the fish. Yeah. Now, in a way, you're setting up to get the perfect shot, but is it really natural? Especially if you're a wildlife photographer, that is your job.
No issue with people doing that, but be open about it. It's a little bit like, do you remember the Blue Planet? I think it was with the polar bears.
Oh, they filmed in a zoo.
Some of the cub scenes, I think, were filmed in a zoo. Mm-hmm. But did they get caught on that, or did they show it in the making of? I can't remember
if they showed it in the making of.
I think they maybe got caught slightly out on it.
I think on that one they got caught out, but I think they've been pretty open with everything else they've done since then, because the new Blue Planet, no, it wasn't Blue Planet, Planet Earth 2, which was absolutely phenomenal. There's a number of scenes in that which are not wildlife. So the eagle scene, for example, with a camera on the back, that was actually a tame eagle.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you can't really strap a camera to the back of a wild eagle
and get your camera back.
Yeah. I think it's about being honest with your work a little bit.
From a professional sense, the way after I thought about it, I criticised it on day one, and then the second day I saw that some other really well-known photographers that we know who are really good were also taking exception to this, and I thought about it a bit more in terms of trying to compare it to something else. And when you're telling a lie like that to say that you've achieved this, there's no difference from that on a professional standpoint as blood doping in sport. There's no difference. Like that guy who won there
was money involved.
There was money involved. There was prestige involved. There's no difference between that and taking drugs in sport. In the photography world, I don't see any difference.
No, because you're
cheating.
You're cheating to gain an upper hand against your competitors and future work.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, and it's a lie.
Yeah. So from that to you can fire up next if you've got something.
Let me have a look.
I'm going on to fish next. So.
I think I'm almost done. Oh no, I've got two left.
Well, hang on. Shall I go then? Because I got quite a few.
You can go then.
Yeah. There's a recent report out on Salmon and Trout Conservation website. There's talking about a salmon escape from a fish farm up in Harris, where you've just been, Daryl.
Yes.
300,000 salmon. It was just a bit more actually. I think it was 311,000. That escaped in 2016, so a couple of years ago, which is one thing. But what is really interesting is that after 2 years of showing this release, it was during a period of storms, in their accounts and loss and all the evidence being there, there's also a database for escapee salmons from fish farms. 2018, the 2016 loss has now been recorded as 0. And they're saying, oh no, actually we made a mistake. It wasn't a loss, it was early mortality of fish. And what Salmon Trout Conservation is saying is that there is something fishy here. that just doesn't seem right, because what this has done by removing that 300,000 is it's made the overall losses, escapees, of salmon from salmon farms look way better than it did before the 300.
So it's like moving the goalposts in a way, or just it's you know what it's rebranding. When something doesn't look good, you rebrand it and rename it as something else.
But it just doesn't. I read through the whole article, and to anybody looking at that, if that's the evidence, what it seems to be to me is a complete cover-up and a lie. I might be wrong. Maybe they're going to provide some amazing evidence to prove that they scooped out 300,000 dead salmon out the bottom of those cages. But then, if you think that you've lost 300,000 fish, the first thing you're going to do in a fish farm is put your divers down and work out where the holes in the nets are from the storm. Because you're not going to want to put more fish in there.
No, definitely.
So you're going to see the dead fish in the bottom.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a complete cover-up to me. So go and read about it, because it's an interesting one. And, salmon farms are under a lot of pressure right now because they're environmentally not friendly really at all.
If you're wondering what we're talking about salmon farms, we have done a few shows on it. But if you think in terms of like a product that is on the shelf, there is no way in a million years that a farmer would get away with having 300,000 chickens die, or 300,000 pigs or cows or whatever it is die, with absolutely no consequences, no one going in to see what actually happened.
They would be shut down.
Either they would be shut down, or serious questions would be asked of why the death rate is so high on their farm. And so that's why you should really look at where your food comes from, particularly your fish. Find out where it's coming from.
I would say try and avoid buying farm salmon at all until they change the industry.
There is Lidl are now selling farmed Norwegian salmon that's coming from those
closed containment.
From closed containment.
Yeah.
So
we are going to do a podcast about that. I know we've been promising it for a while, but it's just trying to sort out the logistics of it. We do have more of a fishing-based podcast coming up at some point in the next month. I don't know if we're going to talk about salmon farms, but there will be a fishing-based one. So it's coming. More info on that.
Yep.
Oh, on you go, Des.
Okay, so I've got one going from this part of the world to Jamaica.
And I know what this is.
And it is NEPA, which is their National Environment Protection Agency over there, I think. And they've asked all of the game bird hunters, because the game bird season has just opened in Jamaica, to shoot white-tailed deer on site because they're an invasive species.
Have they asked the bird hunters to do
the bird hunters to do it? Yes. So anyone.
Yeah.
With shotguns.
That opens up some questions, doesn't it? I hope they gave recommendations of the size of shot, like SG, and not the number 5s that they were using to shoot the birds.
They'll probably need a little bit more kick. But I'm intrigued.
A lot of those islands have invasive species of deer.
I'm intrigued though. Has anyone ever been over to Jamaica
to hunt?
To hunt?
I've never heard of it.
I've never heard of it. Is it possible? Can you do it if you are not a resident? I don't know.
Tell us.
If someone knows, let us know.
I was going to bring up something that Daryl noticed, and then we posted about it, and it got picked up by the Countryside Alliance and a few other organisations, which was the guest editorship of Chris Packham in the latest National Geographic.
Yes, so it was August's edition of National Geographic, which I am a subscriber to.
Yeah, so he was the guest editor of the whole issue, and he had obviously the sort of the one page that the editor always has, and then the following page in there was a piece by, I think he was an investigator for the RSPB.
Yeah, that's correct.
And a good chunk of that article was criticising gamekeepers for illegal persecution.
Openly.
It
openly says...
Chris Packham's one, to be fair to him, didn't, but it was very clear that it was set up for the next page, which was from the RSPB.
Yeah, so I mean, you can go and read it, but Chris Packham's one doesn't mention gamekeepers or anything like that in his article.
No.
But the following page, like Byron said, does.
Which is fine, because we know that illegal persecution does go on, but it's one part of a way, way bigger picture. When I say we know that it does go on, it seems likely that it probably does in some places, just like any illegal activity happens anywhere in the world. There are bad people. It shouldn't happen. So it's fine to highlight it, but what is not fine is the fact that there was no counter to it.
Nothing
at all.
Nothing
and the
at
rest of the magazine, so having set that up in people's
all. It was
mindset,
about grouse shooting.
Yeah, it was very conveniently because it was the August edition, of course. Grouse shooting opening on the 12th or 13th this year because 12th is a Sunday. So it was perfect timing for him, which I find quite distasteful. But then the rest of the magazine was on conflict and
poaching
around the world. So you set up gamekeepers on page 2, and then you talk about all that bad shit that happens in the rest of the world.
Rhinos and stuff around the world. So they're putting grouse shooting in the same...
But don't tell me that wasn't deliberate. It was subtle in a way, but it was absolutely deliberate and calculated the way that all those other articles were put after. So they didn't have to say any more. They just have this subliminal message where they've mentioned it at the start, and then people read about all this horrible, heinous shit that happens in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
For the rest of the magazine.
But I mean, yeah, go and see it for yourself. It's in print.
Are we still good on battery? Are you concerned? You got a concerned look on your face.
There is no battery symbol anymore, so I don't know if it's going to go. So
okay, well,
maybe we should swap over.
Let's swap over. And seamlessly, just like that, we're back with new batteries. Which takes me. Did you have anything left on your list, or was that it?
Let me have a look at my list.
Well, you have a scan through that. Well, I'll give a.
I think I've got one thing left, but it's not 100% relevant, and it just says UFC on it.
Okay, well, you can give that after I talk about this. Yeah. I will encourage every single one of you to go and have a look at 24lions.org. That's 24 the number lions.org. It is there's a video out on Ivan Carter's social media right now, and I think we'll try and share it today as well. It's about the translocation of 24 lions, funny enough, to Mozambique to try and repopulate and recolonize this area, but essentially the whole country in the long run. This happened on the 5th of August, and it's the largest translocation of lions over an international boundary in history. It's been done in conjunction with Zambezi Delta Safaris, which is Mark Haldane. We've mentioned him before on the podcast, particularly on the ones that we did with Ivan Carter. It's also been funded by the Cabela Family Foundation and Ivan Carter's Wildlife Conservation Alliance. They are, for the last 24-odd years or 30-odd years, Mark Haldane has been trying his best in this area that he has, which he runs hunting safaris in, to look after the wildlife and protect it. Massive anti-poaching efforts, huge conservation programs. But despite this, the population of lions has continued to decline. So it's a fascinating story of how they found these 24 lions from all over South Africa with varied enough genetics that they could form a pride that wasn't going to cause any genetic problems. And they're now there. They're in their... it didn't actually say in the short video I watched, but I imagine they're in a small-ish enclosure while they're monitoring them before they release them into the greater bush. But that happened on the 5th of August. It's an incredible story, and something you are able to...
I'm assuming it's going to be a film.
I would think so. There seemed to be quite a lot of video footage. But just the sort of 5-minute film that's been made, it's incredible the effort that individuals are going to protect wildlife for the future. And Ivan's talked about it on his very popular podcast with us before. To give you an idea of the issue with lions in Africa, 100 years ago there was about 200,000 lions. Today, there's about 20,000.
It's nothing, is it, really, in the grand scheme of things?
No. So, and some countries, and unfortunately I didn't write this down, but it's in double figures of countries in Africa that don't have wild lions in them anymore.
That used to. Crazy.
So they're trying to make sure that Mozambique doesn't.
Considering
you
think of if you speak to any average Joe on the street and you say, "Give me an animal out of Africa," they'll say lion.
Yeah, king of the jungle.
Yeah.
So we've always been big supporters of the work that Ivan's doing, and he's not doing this alone, but he is one of the sort of frontmen for it. So go and check that out on his social media. You'll find all the links to go and have a look at it. And if you would like to help support that initiative, then feel free. All the links are on their own websites.
So it's 24 lions.
It's 24lions.org is the direct link, but you can go through Ivan Carter's various websites as well.
Nice. Okay. Have you got anything else? Brian?
No, the rest of the stuff I have is a little less heavy in terms of news. It was actually some film recommendations and podcast recommendations.
Ah, yes, of course.
So we'll start with films, because Daryl and I have both been watching a new series on YouTube that has been launched by Yeti called The Hungry Life.
Yes,
and it's
really
bloody
good.
brilliant.
It's really good.
Really good. You watched one of them just yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah,
or
2
the last
days ago.
one. The last one's been updated. It
makes me bloody hungry.
Cooking is at the core.
Yeah.
It's visiting people around. I think it's mainly in North America at the moment, I think, but I don't know if they're taking it around the world. I've completely forgotten the name of the chap who's in it, who's the lead character.
I'll get us. Oh,
is it coming? Look it up, because we've talked about him before.
Because he's got a film out on
Netflix,
Amazon.
He was the chap who got electrocuted by 24,000 volts by prodding a dead bear to see why it was dead. He was just hiking. He was actually hunting, I think, out in the backcountry. And he came across this dead bear, and he prodded it to see, just out of curiosity, as we often do when you find dead animals. And he didn't realize that the bear was lying on top of an exposed electricity cable.
Yeah. It is, I think is that Eduardo?
Yeah,
Garcia?
Eduardo Garcia.
Yeah.
That's him, yeah.
There we go.
And the film is called Charged.
I watched it on Amazon Prime, and it was there 2 months ago, so I imagine it is still there, and it is really good. It's such a good film. I highly recommend going to see that, and if you are ever complaining about
life
or an injury, then watch that, and then you realize you don't have much to complain about.
No. So he is the frontman for the Hungry Life series, that is a Yeti production, and food is at the core, because he was and he still is a chef, and that's at the sort of core of his life that's carried him through. But he's also a hunter, so he's visiting people where food is important to them, to see their way of life, and it's brilliant. I actually think it could be one of the best series of films that Yeti have put out.
It's you don't need much time to watch these. They're about 8.5, 9 minutes long.
Go and check one of them out.
So definitely go and check them out.
Another one that I wanted to bring up, and I think I mentioned it before, but it's just so awesome. Every time I see it on YouTube, I click it just to watch it for the 5 minutes it's on. It's another Yeti film called, and it's called Carter Andrews. It's about a big game fisherman. I'm not actually quite sure. Somewhere in Seychelles or somewhere like that.
Somewhere hot.
Yeah, somewhere hot and stormy. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful production. Less so than the story. Visually, it's spectacular.
Yeah, some really cool underwater shots as well.
One that we've been writing up very short film reviews for Modern Huntsman. Our regular listeners will know that we've got articles coming out in the next volume of Modern Huntsman, which is going to be probably late September time, something like that. And you can buy Modern Huntsman if you're UK or Europe. You can buy it through our shop. But the last film that I did a brief review on for the Modern Huntsman website was The Story of Bison, which is by Epic Bar. They make like packaged food, but from high quality products. So Tyler left me one when I was here last time, and it was actually a salmon bar. And imagine like a brunch bar that you'd have for your breakfast, but made out of high quality meat. So that's what it's like. And they were showing the story of where they source their bison meat. And it's a beautiful film. They show a field harvest, so they actually go shoot the bison on this farm, and the whole process, and how all of the parts of the animal are used. And when I first saw it, it had something about it. I was like, I love this film, the way it looks and being put together. And of course, who is behind it? The team that supports Donnie Vincent, and Donnie Vincent himself. He was there to help put it together, and his guys at Sick Manta. So it's amazing how when you end up with a really good film production company where you can, they have a signature, you can just tell. And the last one that I had was a new Sitka film called Say When, and it's all about dogs. It's about a Labrador dog trainer, and it's just another really beautiful film with a great story. Have you seen anything recently that tickles you?
No, well, you kind of mentioned that those are the ones I saw recently that were really good. Nothing else really.
The Hunting Film Tour is about to start again. and I believe that there's some really awesome films on that. I haven't had a chance to go and look at the trailers, but we did speak to the guys who are running it, because we were supposed to have something in again this year, but we just didn't get around to getting it ready in time, unfortunately. But one of our films toured the whole tour last year, so good luck to everybody who's touring this year.
Very cool. And I just had a thought that I'm actually going to Norway end of September for the next
Volume 3
volume of Modern Huntsman. So planning that far ahead.
Yep. From that to podcast recommendations. Yes. Of course, the reason that we're doing this is because Daryl did just put up a blog post about some recommended podcasts that we recommend you listen to. So we thought we might as well mention it to our podcast listeners. First and foremost, don't stop listening to this one.
Yep, obviously it needs to be the number one on your list.
A new podcast that has started probably 8 weeks ago, something like that, is from our friends at Field Sports Channel. Charlie Jacoby has been on this podcast a very long time ago now, probably 2 years ago, and he is sort of the face of Field Sports Channel along with David Wright, and they have, after talking about it for a very long time, finally started their own podcast. I would like to think that they were encouraged by us and that we gave them the idea, and I'm pretty sure that is one of the reasons they've done it. But welcome, guys. Welcome to the family that is podcasting. So go and check that out. A couple of these we've mentioned before, and we've either been on or they've been on our show. Journal of Mountain Hunting is one we always mention. Educated Hunter, you've heard from Kieran Ireland, who's one half of the Educated Hunter podcast just a few shows ago. So they're slowly building those out, and in fact, I think one coming up certainly in the next 2 months from them is going to be the podcast we did with him. So he was here, we sat in our office, and he did a podcast with us. So you're going to hear us on the Educated Hunter in the next 2 months. So look out for that. Conservation Matters, which is Shane Mahoney's podcast. It's a weird one because it's not a regular podcast.
Yeah, he doesn't put out stuff, but often when he does, it's like a whole chunk in one go.
Yeah. A lot of it is extracts from speeches that he gives. And as a resource that's just sitting there, it's fantastic. And it's not going to take you long to get through them. So I'd get through those and listen to what the man has to say, because he's a very articulate, intelligent guy who has also been on this podcast before. So go back and check out his podcast on here, and then go through all the Conservation Matters ones. A different one that I came across, mainly because I was trying to listen to podcasts that Charles Post had been on, another recent guest of ours, an incredibly popular one. I thoroughly enjoyed recording that podcast, and Charles is going to be, hopefully, in Scotland with us, maybe even doing some filming before the end of this year. But he was on a podcast called Mountain and Prairie, which might completely turn off all of our UK listeners, because it sounds like something in the West. But it's a fascinating podcast if you're intrigued about how the land works and how we use the land. So they do talk a lot about agriculture, and it's very much less hunting and sort of fishing focused, but they have some fascinating discussions there. So they were even talking about soil structures on one of them, which might sound a little mundane, but it's actually incredibly important. And the way that they discuss the topics, it's anything but boring. So go and check that out if you want something a little bit different. Joe Rogan.
Yep,
goes without saying.
I love the memes online, and it was like how people were educated in the 1970s, and there's a picture of everyone in the classroom, and it's like how people are educated now, and it was just a picture of the Joe Rogan podcast.
He is some guy.
I've actually started watching Joe Rogan shows on Netflix, and he does a huge amount of shows on just like random things. He's really into like
debunking myths.
So there was a whole one. It was like Bigfoot, chemtrails, UFOs, and then he goes and he debunks them, and they're absolutely brilliant.
The thing that makes one of the many things that makes him so great is he just takes no shit. Yeah. He just says it exactly how he sees it.
And his face, it's not like he's standing there with like a straight face and like nodding his head. He's there with a big grin going, I don't know about this. I really don't know about this at all.
And the last one that I wanted to mention was The Hunting Collective. which is we have mentioned this before, just when it came out, because it's a fairly recent podcast, and that's from Ben O'Brien, and he's had some awesome guests on there. He's a really great podcast host, and he set an incredibly high standard for podcasting. So it's great to have him there, and hopefully we're going to have him on soon, or maybe even meet him, because I believe he's moving to Montana, and to Bozeman, where everybody else.
We are going to the States. Yeah. That is something that in the next few weeks needs to be planned. Us going to the United States, because we've been talking about it for so long, and we just need to go and do it.
Next 12 months.
But I think we need to time it with the shows that start early next year, so that we can do a show and then spend a bit of time. I think we need to give ourselves probably 3 weeks to actually.
We need to see the place,
because I mean it's so big, it's so insanely big, and yeah, it's kind of hard to. I guess I lived in Australia, so grasping how big places are is actually relatively easy for me. But unless you've been to one of these big countries, then you just can't get it, because the UK is just a blip. It's nothing. It's insignificant.
Bobbing in the sea.
You know.
And we have so many of you guys are from the States. Like, so many of our listeners are now from the various states in America and Canada.
So send us an email and convince us why we should go to where you live.
Yeah, to your state. We are coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wrap from me.
That's everything. That's everything from me, I think.
I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was.
We should try and do one of these more often.
We definitely should catch people up with the world and what we're up to. Well, in fact, we can tell people what we're up to the next few months. Obviously, I'm going to Norway, and then I'm off to Ireland. And
yes, we got a job in Ireland with a whole. I believe it's going to be a group of very active people on sort of social media. I don't actually know who's going to be there, apart from the organizer, Jan Hafmeyer. So there's going to be lots of bloggers and people who make videos and that there. So we're going to be doing some of the documentary stuff for them in Ireland.
I'm also going to get a haircut this week, just to let everyone to let everyone know. My hair is annoying me so much.
A beard trim?
Yeah. I've actually been just letting them both grow, and then I'll do them both at the same time. Well, I'm not doing my own hair, but yeah. And you also
you don't let anybody touch your beard, though.
No, mainly because
they always screw it up.
They always screw it up. It's always, do you want
apart from that really cool place we went to before your wedding
in Aberdeen?
Yeah,
but they knew what they were doing. Yeah. They were professional.
Well, you
beard
walk
trimmers.
in and the guys who are doing, there was girls there trimming beards and that as well, but I think it was a guy.
That did ours, yeah.
And he had a great beard, so you know that you're in good hands when the person trimming your beard has a great beard.
My experiences of beards is that if you go to the barber, I normally get my hair done at the
your hair done.
My hair done at the same place. Because you go to a place and you like your hair
you don't have to say anything. You sit down,
and you get done. Yeah. But I learnt very early on the beards they must not touch, because one day I was like, oh yeah, can I just get a little bit? I just need it trimmed off, and then the came out and I lost over half of it, and I was just sitting there in the mirror going, you know what, it's not the end of the world to grow back, but it's a little bit annoying that you've taken my entire beard off, basically.
You've taken my manhood. Half of my manhood is gone.
Beard I can deal with myself. Although I think my wife disagrees that I can deal with it myself. But
I disagree that you can do it.
I mean, it's terrible, but it doesn't help that I've got a mop on my head right now. Yeah. My hair it looks like kind of curtains, and it's not.
You should tell people about your recent trip.
What have I done?
You've just been on holiday for a week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've been to. I was on Harris. Yeah. In fact, I can talk about my rooftop tent. So I was away on the Isle of Harris last week, and I got blown away for most of the week. We've had glorious weather for months, and it was terrible weather the entire week. It rained.
You picked a great week to go on holiday.
It rained every single day, every single night, and it was windy. There was even tents collapsing. It was that were not my tent. And I just bought a rooftop tent for my vehicle.
It's an ARB.
It's an ARB, and apart from a few minor issues, one being not enough guy ropes on the awning, not enough being none, which was a very odd thing. It held up considering there was no guy ropes, which I was impressed with, but they need guy ropes. It has to be done. And then there's like an extra rain cover that goes over the top of it, and that just flaps like hell in the wind, and there was nothing I could do about it at all. And it was raining so much I was a little apprehensive to take it off, considering I the one thing I had going for me was I was perfectly dry, so I didn't want to chance it. But I left the island a day early because it became an exercise of sleep deprivation because I hadn't slept for 2 days because the wind was that strong, and just the flapping, and I did everything. Honestly, I did everything possible to stop things flapping. And
did it keep your dog awake, or did he not care?
No, he didn't really care. But I mean, the wind was so strong that the car was shaking, and it was an unpleasant week.
How much of Harris did you actually get around?
Not a huge amount. The lower part. I mean,
did some diving though.
Yeah, I did. I did some diving. I did some fishing. Did some walking. We really wanted to spend a day on Lewis because actually on Lewis, I mean, they're all attached. It's the same island. Up there, they've got a huge amount of historical stuff. I think, well, from what I could read, more than Harris does in the south part. And they've got a lot of Norse stuff, and I didn't realise that that's where the little chess pieces come from with the kings, and that was the first. They found ivory chess pieces on the beach on Lewis.
I didn't know
and
that.
They were from the Vikings.
No way.
Yeah, that's
and
why.
then they made up the rules.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so we were planning to see a bit more, but it just means we have to go back. That's a simple matter of the fact. But I was very lucky to get on the returning ferry home because I hadn't booked for that day because we were leaving a day early, and they managed to squeeze me on with about an inch to spare on my tow hitch on the back of the vehicle. They even said to me as I'm driving around down the ramp, they said, "You're probably going to have to reverse back up because we're not sure if you'll fit you." And I was like, "You're fitting me." And,
I'm getting off this island.
Yeah, I'm getting off this island. And then we spent the day on Skye, which typically, I think probably most people have heard of Skye or maybe been to it. In summer, the hot spots, the fairy pools, Fairy Glen, the Kerrang, all the stacks, Old Man Stour and all that, that's, those are your hot spots. They can only be described as a hellhole. I love Skye. It is truly beautiful, but they have massive problems with tourism there, and not in the good way. The roads are absolutely destroyed.
I think without a shadow of a doubt, it's got to the point where it's being detrimental to the island.
100%. And the thing is, you speak to you. It's like a double-edged sword because the island definitely benefits from it because you look at all the B&Bs, all the hotels, everything is fully booked 365 basically. So that's great. But on the other hand, you've got to ask yourself how much money is actually going into the island, because when I was driving through, I typically never go in the middle of summer. But when I was driving through, it's just camper van after camper van after camper van, caravan and hire vehicles and tour buses. And I would say most of those people have brought their own food, brought their own everything onto the island. They'll use it on the island, they'll leave the island and probably spend very little money on the island.
Yeah. And abuse it, screw up the roads, drive on the verges, make it muddy, make it impossible
dispose
for
of the
local people.
toilets down the side of the road, which does happen. That was a picture taken last week. Like the porta toilets in the camper van side of the road.
Just dump it out.
Doesn't
matter.
It's insane.
Isn't it?
And this over the last 5, and the crazy thing is, they're still encouraging more. I do not know how they can fit more people on that island. What they need to do is either destroy the bridge so that they can.
I tell you what, there's some people in Skye who would probably like to see the bridge not there anymore.
Destroy the bridge so that they can limit people going on the island, or they do the sensible thing and charge people that are not from Scotland or even the UK to go across. £5 a person.
Just to pay for the upkeep.
It's insane. It's insane that, and also they built a new car park in one of the new places, and it's not even finished. The car park is already full with a 3-mile queue down the side of the road. Like they're building facilities that are not even fit for purpose while they're being built. And we've got a few friends on the island that I'm sure have a much better opinion than us on the tourism problem. But I mean, places must deal with it. I mean, when we were in high school, we learned about the Lake District and the
issues with paths,
the honeypot thing, where everyone would go to the Lake District in the summer, and erosion of paths and parking and all those kinds of things.
This isn't new.
It's not a new thing. It's just that it's new for Skye, and it's unlike the Lake District where people can spread out.
Yeah.
The island is
There's not that many roads.
And the Lake District, the roads are pretty good there. It's mainly single-track roads.
Apart from that sort of main spine that goes north to south in Skye, it's mainly small.
And the driving, oh wow, this is a little bit of a moan, but the driving is unbelievable. I've got it on my dash cam. People driving at 10, 15 mile an hour down the roads. You can't overtake because they're so bendy. Some of them are single track. Then stopping. I had a person stop in front of me on a very sharp, almost like 90-degree bend, going up a hill, and they stopped to take a picture of the scenery on the left-hand side, and I was behind them. I just couldn't believe it.
They know that it's not like a safari park where you drive and you expect people to stop in front of you. It's like people live there.
That's the thing I don't. It's crazy is that you go on the island and you're like, okay, this island's for tourists. That's what it's for. But there's people that live and work there, and it took me an extra what would I normally do in winter, a half an hour journey. It was taking me an hour to get from one place to another. It's insane. But I mean, they just need to fix it, and then it'll be a great place. Don't get me wrong, Skye is a wonderful place. So if you want to come to Scotland, it is definitely one of those things that you should go and see, but time it right and be responsible when you go.
Go after like October.
Yeah, October.
And also, there's no midges then.
The other thing, which I think you'll find it all over the world, I find insane, is that on Skye there's amazing spots, but people only go to the certain one. So, for example, I drove and I knew some spots that I'd been to before, and I went to them. There was not a single soul. Because
and yet, like 2 miles up the road.
Because it's more effort. So, okay, you got to walk for an hour up a hill, but you're seeing the same thing that, if not even better than these other people, but they're going there because it's 200 meters off the road.
They're probably not dressed right, and a lot of them probably won't be capable of doing the hour trek up a mountain.
Yeah. But anyway.
But so you kind of had a good time, but
it wasn't
what you had pictured in your mind before.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the best holiday I've ever been on. Unfortunately, but we made the best of it. And on one of the days it was really stormy and windy, we went diving for the day. Yeah. So I mean, it was not. Yeah, it wasn't wasted, but we made the best of it. So I think we will leave people to it.
Yes, we will.
And
we'll bring you another show in 2 weeks. Don't forget to enter the competition.
And if you would like to follow us on any of the social medias, just look on Facebook for Podcast Into the Wilderness and follow us on Instagram, pace_brothers. If you'd like to contact the show, it's podcast@paceproductionsuk.com. And to listen to the show, all you need to do is type in Pace Brothers Into the Wilderness or just Into the Wilderness Podcast. It comes up on most devices and most apps. The number one being Apple iTunes, your native app, and the second one now being Spotify.
Yeah.
So if you are not on Spotify, you can have a free account on Spotify. And Byron's got the free version of Spotify, and I think you can listen to all of the music. You just get adverts.
Yeah, you just have to put up with the odd advert.
And you can't repeat tracks a certain amount of times. This is only for music. For podcasts, you can listen to podcasts.
Well, there's no adverts if you listen to podcasts.
Yeah. But so that's the number. I use Spotify, not for podcasts. I use the podcast app. But anyway, there's loads. So if you're an Android user, Spotify might be a very good option, because I actually got a message a week ago asking what is the best app for Android, and I suggested Spotify to them. But there is other ones: Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Addict. I think they're Overcast. Lots of options.
iHeartRadio.
Yeah.
I don't think barely anybody listens on iHeartRadio.
I think barely anyone does. I think Spotify is stomped all over them now, choking out the little people as fast as it can.
So that's it. We look forward to all of you joining us in 2 weeks.